Hello. I just wanted to quickly show off my sprite and animation systems that I work with in Unity. This is all custom built within the Unity game engine, and yeah. First, I just want to quickly say why I made this system. Basically, because the workflows that Unity provided were too slow for me, and I needed additional features that Unity doesn't support either. So, first of all, I just need to go to my texture import settings, and I just need read and write to be on, and the filter mode to be point. From here, I can create my own atlas. So if I pull myself back out of here, go scriptable objects, atlas, I store them in here. So this is just a scriptable object that holds all the sprite data, and also holds all the animation data as well. Um, so I can just create one like that. So the first thing, my Atlas SO, I call everything like an Atlas. My Atlas SO needs a texture, so that would be the texture that I just showed off there. And the entity motion type is going to be an NPC. Basically, that is so I have access to the collection of animations that NPCs will do. I can show that later on. The next thing is the pivot color. So one thing that I built in is my marker system. Essentially, I have a marker texture that goes along with every atlas texture. And essentially, they are just a bunch of red pixels that are of the same resolution as the sprite texture. And I use these red pixels to define the pivot points. In Unity, there's two ways, and I think this is for most game engines, there are two main ways to animate something and define their pivot points. The first one is you put every sprite in a cell, I guess. It's just a square box, and you define where that pivot point is within that cell. Usually it's like at the bottom center, and then you animate, and then you put every sprite within like this grid, and it has to be sort of pixel perfect. And there's two problems with that. One, it takes too long to make sure everything is pixel perfect. I would have to go into Procreate and make sure it all sits really perfectly or whatever. Or I use another program that does it for me, but I don't want more software bloat in my workflow. The other way of doing it is you go into Unity and you have it automatically draw out the sprite bounds, and then you manually adjust each sprite pivot. I have 103 sprites for this one NPC. It's just going to take too long. So instead, I have this texture. So the reason why this is a lot more accessible to me is because when I animate, I have to define a pivot point anyways. If I do like a walk cycle, I have to sort of show where the camera of that walk cycle is pointing, which is the pivot point. And all I do is I just cache that pivot point as a red pixel, and then I can move my sprites however I want as long as those pixels are there. And I just separate it out to a separate texture so it doesn't get built in at runtime. It's purely just an editor tool. So maybe it makes more sense when I actually show it off. So the pivot color is red. And I'm just going to make sure that the alpha is 1 as well. I always make that mistake. The next thing are markers. So I just added on more features to this marker system. I felt like it was a bit more powerful than just defining pivot points that Unity already does. I can also define other points in the sprite. So for my gym bro, he has calling. He has a calling animation, and then he also has a music animation. So here what I'll do is the type. So he talks, And I just got to remember, I think talking was green, so I just got to go green like that. And then over here, he also listens to music. And the music one I designated as magenta like that. And I'll just select music. Now I can actually go into the Atlas factory, which is where I build up my sprites. And I go in here, I can just put in my scriptable object that holds the texture, and then also my marker texture I was doing. So I'll actually call it, yeah. And then I can just generate these sprites. I just gonna make these bigger, and here are all the 100 sprites. It's 104 sprites in total. So, and I can see each one of them. I have 3 sections in my Atlas factory. I have the directory width, I have the directory, I have the preview, and I have the Atlas overview. And I just cut it up into thirds like this. Where the first thing I do after I generate these sprites is I actually have to order these guys. So right now, if I loop through them with the arrow keys, they're all out of order. They have to be in order. This is the tedious part, but it makes everything else really quick and easy. So what I have to do, so with the arrow keys, I can go through them, and then if I want to swap them, I can hit Q and E, and that will swap them. And so all I have to do is find, so the first sprite goes all the way back here, the second sprite, index 1, this is index 2, that's index 3, index 4, that'll be index 5, and I could just keep doing this. That's index 6, 7, where is it? That's index 8. Yep. Oh. There we go. That's actually index 9. Yep. And then that's index 10 like that. Sometimes they're good. The reason why I have to order them like this is because it's actually not very easy to figure out how they are ordered in code. In this sprite sheet, you can clearly see rows, but you can imagine, like, if you have a sprite sheet that's sort of all over the place, defining those rows are actually really difficult. And you can only really go through pixel by pixel. I've done it as best as I can where I measure the bottom left pixel. And again, I see 2 options ordering the sprites. Either I have my sprites pixel perfect along each row, and as soon as the pixel goes down, as soon as the next pixel, which is a new sprite, is below that row, it's a brand new row, I guess. But these, I have to make that pixel perfect. These sprites are not pixel perfect. I don't want to use another software to line them all up, nor do I want to manually line them all up in Procreate. So instead, I go through this process where I manually check them. So here that is index 18, so now I need to find 19, which is this one. And so that will be 19. This will be 20. 21. That'd be 22. Sometimes they line up alright. I do have like a threshold where I go, okay, if it's within these, I think like 5 pixels, then that's considered a row. But you can still see that it's a bit all, like it tries its best, but it's not, it's not perfect. So this is 24, and that is 25. Sometimes they line up nicely. There we go. Yeah. So it purely depends on how I set up the atlas. But I want to get it in Unity as quick as I can, just so I can do this. So what was that? That was, oh yeah. So that would be, oh yeah. Cool. So that's 40. That'll be 41. That'll be 42. 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. Yep, 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 yep. Wow. Yeah, they all lined up perfectly. Okay, there we go. We keep almost almost perfect from that point. Yep, yep, yep. So I just got to sort of get good at this. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool. And hopefully the bottom row is good. No. So what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. So that's all. That's all set up. But now it makes it really easy because instead of going into each sprite and going, you're breathing, you're walking, you're whatever, I can just go from this part of the array to this other part of the array is walking. So I can show an example of that. So with walking, I actually have to tick. He doesn't do all of these. This is the collection of animations that NPCs may do. The way I designate that is just with the enabled clip, and then it shows up with um, 3 other options, which is what sort of animation. So I got looping, ping pong, one shot, and manual. I'll discuss those later. And then I just got a start index and an end index. So with the end index, all I need to do is define when it starts, which is at 0, and when it ends, which is at index 7. And that just assigns 7 sprites all at once. And from here, I can just set the keyframe times. I don't actually have there's just already so much text, so I don't have much real estate to add in anything else. But these numbers represent how many frames each sprite is holding for. So these are like keyframes, and here I'll just animate in 3s just to show it off. And then I have a built-in preview window, and I can just hit play. And there's the walk cycle. And so essentially I just rinse and repeat and do that for everything. And the order does not matter. As long as all this is set up, it works. So from here, all I need to do is just enable all these. So he sits and blinks, sits and breathes, sits and calls, sits and eats, and sits and listens to music. He doesn't read, isn't sick, doesn't sleep, doesn't smoke. He does blink, he does breathe, does call, does eat, does play music, doesn't read. And I got these 2, he does get distracted. Okay. So then I just go through every sprite and assign it a clip, as I did here. This one's breathing, so standing, breathing, we're going from index 8 to index 10. Now with breathing, I don't want to waste frames. So if I have to ensure every sprite is unique. And when you breathe, it's sort of ping pong. So he breathes up and then he breathes down. And so what I do here, instead of looping, I can set it to ping pong. And then from here, standing breathing, we can go, so at the bottom, he holds for 50 frames, and then he transitions up for 10 frames, and he's all the way at the top for 50 frames, and then he'll go back, and it'll just ping pong between these 2. And we can watch that in real time as well. And there we go. In Unity, what you would have to do is you would have to copy the middle frame and paste it on the other side. And so you end up with 4 frames. So we'll go index 0, 1, 2, and then 1 again. And so then as it loops, it'll go back to 0 and go 0, 1, 2, 1, 0, 1, 2, 1, 0. And that's a tedious process. And let's say you have more than 3 frames to ping pong, you're copying over all these middle frames and then reversing them, and that process just took way too long. Here, this is all automated, and there's less data that's holding, so I guess it's more optimized. I don't know. I don't know Unity source code, so I don't know what's happening underneath. Here, this is blinking, so this is standing blinking here. So we'll go from index 11 to 12. It's only 2 frames. And then he holds his eyes open for 100 frames, and he closes his eyes for 10 frames. This is standing distracted, so this is a funny one. We'll see how we go. But I thought this was a pretty funny idea. He just gets distracted. He has like the eyebrow raise. So as a standing distracted, he'll go from 13 to 15, and this also does a ping pong. And he'll hold, and then I guess he raises eyebrow for 5 frames, and then he holds it for like, I don't know, 100 frames or something like that. And we can watch that happen. So maybe he holds it for a bit too long. Maybe I can go 70 frames. Yeah. And maybe the head turn takes a bit too, sort of in slow motion, maybe 3 frames, I'd say. Yeah, so I can adjust the timing at real time like that, and it's all in the one window, um, which is what I wanted. I hated setting up Unity's way, where you would have the animation clip window at the bottom, and then you would have the scene window at the top, and you would have to have already a prefab with an animation controller and everything set up just to watch the clip play. It's just so annoying. Like, usually I wasn't ready to create the prefab yet. In my head, I wanted to go, I want to create all the animation clips and set up everything, and then I'll set up the prefab with all these completed assets. But in like with the way Unity wants you to do it, they want you to generate the prefab along with the animations. The system, you don't need to. You don't need the prefab. Okay, this one's eating, so standing and eating. And this goes from 16 all the way down to 29. And I'll probably just skim through these. I'll just have everything at like 5 frames. And then maybe have this one at like 10 frames and this one at 5 frames. And that's him eating. Yeah, that's fine. So the next animation is the standing music. So again, this is a slightly different one. So we'll go from index 30 all the way to index 44. So this is a one-shot clip. What makes it a one-shot is he only puts his headphones on once. Once he puts his headphones on, he'll start playing the music note VFX. So that's what will make it a one shot. I wouldn't want it looping over and over again. And then here, I'll probably just keep it at 5. I think 5 is a good timing for each frame. Okay. And then we can actually look at that. And there we go. It's a bit robotic. I'll come in and finally tune all these keyframe hold times. But for proof of concept, that's fine. And then you can see here I have a magenta circle, just indicating that I'm going to spawn VFX notes here. As we go down, this is the standing calling. So this is very similar to the standing music, where it is a one shot, and we're going from index 45 all the way through to index 58. And the same thing again, the green pixel indicating that a speech bubble will be coming out of that once he's finished with the animation. Like if I play it here, like that's how fast he goes. That's every single frame. And if you're hand drawing every frame, you can sort of imagine that it takes a really long time to draw this guy 100 times. I don't want that to be 200 times or 300 times. So this is why I have these hold frames. Like, yes, it makes the animation choppy, but oh my god, I can actually make my game, you know? And it has a bit of charm. Okay, so what I can see on this particular frame, yeah, here, I didn't, it's sort of cutting off. It's grabbing the next frame's like elbow. So I'll have to go in and refine that. But for now, that's fine. Um, cool. And this is sitting, breathing. So again, this would be ping pong, and this goes from 59 to 61. And the timing for that was 50, 10, and 50. And we can just watch that as well. Cool. And sitting breathing is from 62 to 64. Oh, sitting blinking. Oh, from, my bad, 63. So he's holding his eyes for 100, blinking for 10, and this is sitting distracted. And I'll just get through all these just so we can actually see it in the game quicker. So what was it? It was like 53 and 70 or something like that. There's also a ping pong. The other one that I have is manual. I don't use it as often anymore because my game used to have like some parkour, but I actually pulled it all out. What manual is it allows me to define time separately from like chronological time. So instead of using time, I use something like velocity. And if I wanted to use velocity, I would set this to manual, and that would mean that when I play the clip, it's going to like I would need to implement my own time measurement. So for something like jumping, you would need to use velocity as a way to animate the animation because there's like an animation where you're at the peak, there's an animation when you're falling, and you're falling at different times. So you can't use regular time to indicate when the next frame occurs. You have to use velocity instead. But I've kept it in there just in case there are other use cases. But that's what manual's for. Okay, and this is sitting and eating. This goes from 67 to 80. And this also loops. Oh, okay. Yeah. And just set the hold frames for 5. And I made this one like 10, didn't I? Okay, and his shoulder's getting cut off here. So I'd have to go out and fix that up. But that's not much of a problem. I won't show it off, but I've also built up a way to figure out when it's a new sprite or when I've edited a sprite. So here I would have to go in and edit this thing. And one of the problems that I was running into was how do you know if you've added on to the sprite or you've just edited a sprite? Because you don't want to lose. I don't want to do this again, right? And so if I go in and generate sprites again, I should like retain all that information. And what used to happen is every time I generated the sprite, it would start everything from scratch again. But now it knows when the sprite hasn't changed, and it also knows when the sprite has been edited, and it knows when the sprite has been added on, or at least it does its best. What I mean by that is if I shuffle all these sprites around, it's not going to work um, because it relies on these bounding boxes. If these bounding boxes are different, but the index already exists, that usually indicates to me that I've edited the sprite. And sometimes I have to go in and manually change the sprite array. But I just sort of figured out, okay, what's the workflow I usually do? Well, usually if I'm going to add in more animations, I'm going to tack it on at the end here, meaning there's going to be more sprites. And if there's more sprites, that means they're new. They're 100% new. But if there are the same amount of sprites, but they're different, that means I've changed it, if that makes sense. Doesn't always work, but in most use cases, it works fine. Okay, and this one is sitting music, so we're going from 81 to 89, and I'll just make these 5. That, and then this one is the last one, sitting and calling from 93 to 103. Oops, not 1,000, 103, there we go. And set all these to 5 frames each. And sitting and calling is 1 shot, and sitting and music is 1 shot. Oh. Oh, right. This is supposed to be 92. Play that again. Oh, 93. My bad. And then this is 94. I made a mistake right at the very end. There we go. That's fine. There we go. Okay. That's all set up. From here, all I need to do is actually implement it. I have a prefab semi set up. I have the NPC brain. This is just my NPC script. But I have an Atlas renderer, so I don't use the Sprite renderer. I use this Atlas renderer instead. I have renderer types. This renders a whole bunch of stuff, not just animations. It also renders stuff that are sliced, things that are just simple. It also goes into my particle system as well, so there's lots of different things that my Atlas system, like it's many systems. I don't know what the umbrella term for that is, but here I define it as motion world, and then I just use I just grab my Atlas. It automatically gives you the texture and then the material, which is the NPC material, and that should show him off. This is just the silhouette, and that's just part of the game. But to actually see him, he looks like this. And then I can just look through each of the sprites, and these are all 103 sprites rendering in the scene. The last thing I just need to do is actually put my NPC into my, well, where I store all the NPC stuff. Oh, it's in my trip, and I won't go through this, but this is just me putting in the details to actually generate the sprite. And I think that's everything. Fingers crossed. We'll see how we go. Bystander renderer. Oh, my bad. I missed one thing on the prefab that I didn't set up. Prefabs, NPCs, Jimbo. I forgot to give my Atlas renderer to the NPC. Alright. Cool, don't worry about the debug logs. And let's see if I can find him. It's all randomly generated, so I don't know. I might get poor RNG here and I just don't get him. Oh no, they're sitting on top of each other. Oh, well, there he is. So if I just check him, there he is, and now he's going in. Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, he exists. Oh, there's another one. Here he is. Cool. And he's getting distracted. Beautiful. I'll have to get the question mark up and running as well. But that's how I get my NPC in my game. That took a lot longer than just me sitting here doing it because I'm talking, but that's usually around 10 to 15 minutes of work. Originally, when I first started making this game, I used Unity's default systems with the animation controller and everything, and that was around 30 or 40 minutes generating these guys. So to cut it down like that, it was about 3 months of work to actually get that whole system running. But if this is a long term project, that saves me so much time, and it's so much easier and way more fun, and I feel a bit prouder doing it this way. So yeah, hopefully that's, I don't know if it's helpful, but hopefully it's at least interesting. So thanks, guys.